I want you to picture something for me. You're standing in a modern kitchen. Sunlight is streaming in. Maybe there's a pot of coffee brewing.
Sounds pretty ideal.
Right. But standing right there next to you is a dog that looks like like it just stepped out of a surrealist painting. It has this perfectly smooth, egg-shaped head, tiny triangular eyes, and ears that are standing at absolute attention.
Oh, yeah, the classic silhouette.
Exactly. And it is built like a canine body petter. Plus, right now, it has a bright pink rubber toy in its mouth. But more importantly, this dog is absolutely 100% convinced that whatever is happening in this kitchen,
Yeah.
and, specifically with this rubber toy, needs its full, undivided participation.
Is a very specific, almost comical kind of intensity. I mean, they demand your attention in a way that feels incredibly human. It's like they're actively trying to engage you in a very serious negotiation over playtime.
Yeah, a high-stakes negotiation. We are, of course, talking about the Bull Terrier. So today's deep dive is pulling together this massive stack of sources for you. We've got historical breed records, behavioral analyses, veterinary insights, all to answer one incredibly fascinating question.
And it really is a bizarre transition when you look at it.
It totally is. How on earth did a dog engineered for gritty 19th-century blood sports become one of the most recognizable, affectionate, and honestly goofy comedians in the canine world?
Well, to understand the dog leaning on your leg today, we really have to look closely at the historical blueprint that shaped its mind and its body.
Right, it's not just an accident.
No, not at all. We aren't just looking at random physical quirks or like funny personality traits. We're looking at a carefully preserved architectural foundation that was designed for a very, very different world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to figure out this dog's quirky modern personality, we have to travel back in time and look at its original job, right?
Yeah, let's set the scene for that. So we are in Birmingham, England, and the year is roughly 1850.
Peak Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. The air is just thick with smoke from iron foundries running day and night. It's the absolute height of the industrial era. And down in the yards and taverns behind these factories, you find these early dogs.
But they don't look like the eggheads we see today.
Right. They aren't the polished bull terriers we know. They are what were called bull-and-terrier crosses.
So they were essentially a utilitarian hybrid, just mixing different working traits together to see what worked best in that environment.
That's spot on. They are bred for a world that valued three specific physiological and psychological things above all else, which were grip, nerve, and speed.
Grip, nerve, and speed.
Yeah. You had the raw, anchored physical strength coming from the bulldog-type ancestors, and that was combined with the lightning-fast quickness and relentless tenacity of the terrier.
Because they were fighting dogs.
They were. These dogs were bred for legal blood sports of that era. And, we have to look at this factually because that harsh environment is what forged the physical and mental resilience of the breed we see today. They had to be impervious to pain, highly reactive, and just completely fearless.
It kind of makes me think of automotive engineering, like you take the heavy-duty, torque-heavy block of a muscle car and you cram it into a lightweight, highly responsive rally chassis.
I think a great way to visualize it.
You end up with something that generates an incredible amount of kinetic energy, but is also just wildly reactive to the slightest touch of the gas pedal. But wait, society obviously changed. Those blood sports faded out. They were outlawed. So who is still buying these dogs if the betting yards were shut down? I mean, why didn't the breed just vanish entirely?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Britain was undergoing a massive cultural shift. Cities were booming, the Victorian middle class was really growing, and a brand new obsession took hold among the wealthy.
Which was
the dog show. Suddenly, people didn't care about what a dog could do in a fight. They cared intensely about what a dog looked like standing still.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, standardized appearance, or what they called type, became the new cultural currency.
So it transitioned from a gladiator pit to, like, a beauty pageant. That explains the shift in purpose, but how did they get that incredibly distinct, almost alien look? Because those early foundry dogs didn't look like that.
No, they didn't. And that brings in a breeder named James Hinks. What Hinks did was take these tough, scarred bull and terrier dogs, and over many generations, he selectively paired them with other types of dogs.
What other breeds?
Likely the white English terrier, which is extinct now, and maybe even the Dalmatian. He was actively refining their outline. He wanted a cleaner, more elegant silhouette that would really stand out in the exhibition ring.
And it worked, obviously.
Oh, massively. By the 1860s, Hinks had produced these striking, almost entirely white dogs that caused an absolute sensation.
I can imagine. The public must have been shocked. They'd probably never seen a dog so sleek but incredibly muscular at the same time.
It was a total revolution in canine aesthetics. But here is the crucial takeaway for you listening. That physical intensity, the raw courage, the persistence from the 1850s, none of that disappeared.
So the engine was the same?
Exactly. Hinks didn't hollow the dog out. The software was still running the 1850s operating system. Breeders simply redirected those highly concentrated behavioral traits into a brand new, highly stylized physical vessel.
That stylized vessel is exactly what I want to dig into next, because Hinks and the breeders who followed him prioritized a visual standard that resulted in a canine anatomy unlike anything else on Earth. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, that head.
Yes, the famous egg head. That long, curved, egg-shaped profile developed very gradually, generation by generation.
It wasn't an overnight thing.
No, not at all. Breeders actively selected for a distinct downward curve from the top of the skull all the way down to the nose. They were completely eliminating the stop.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the stop is that indented area between the forehead and the muzzle that most dogs have, right? Like on a Labrador.
Precisely. The Bull Terrier has absolutely no stop.
I've always wondered about the mechanics of that. People see photos online and assume it's some sort of deformity, but it's a completely deliberate feature. Does it actually change how the jaw functions?
It does, actually. It maximizes the surface area for jaw muscle attachment.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So while Victorian breeders were chasing an avant-garde, completely smooth aesthetic that looked modern and clean, they inadvertently preserved and even enhanced the incredible gripping strength of those early foundry dogs.
That is mind-blowing. So form actually fueled function accidentally.
Yeah, exactly. Add in those small, close-set triangular eyes, which, by the way, were originally bred to sit deep in the skull for protection during fights, and those stiff, upright ears, you get an expression that is completely unique.
But underneath that very famous head is a body that catches a lot of people off guard. I mean, on paper, their height and weight don't sound massive, they're medium-sized, but picking one up is like trying to lift a suitcase filled with lead.
Yeah, that dense muscle mass is the original working structure showing through. They have a remarkably broad chest, a thick, powerful neck, and a very, very low center of gravity.
Which, practically speaking for you as an owner, matters immensely. Because they have that low center of gravity and absolute density, you are fighting pure physics if they decide to lunge for a squirrel on a walk. A medium-sized dog suddenly feels like a draft horse on the end of the leash.
Which is why early leash training isn't just a good idea, it's a structural necessity. You can't overpower them easily. And while we are looking at their physical makeup, we should probably clarify the coat variations too.
Right, because Hinks made the all-white dogs famous, but they come in a variety of colors today, right? Brindle, red, fawn, black brindle, tricolor.
Correct. But here's where we get into some important biology.
Oh, wait. Here's where it gets really interesting. I've heard rumors that the white dogs act differently or are more prone to certain issues than the brindle ones. Is there any truth to that?
Well, let's clear up the personality thing first. Color does not dictate personality.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, they aren't running different temperament software based on their coat color. However, there is a profound biological connection between a white coat and health, specifically congenital deafness.
Wait, why would fur color have anything to do with hearing? That seems completely disconnected. Like, how does a white coat make a dog deaf?
It comes down to cellular biology. The cells that produce pigment, which are called melanocytes, don't just color the fur. They also migrate during embryonic development to the inner ear.
To do what?
They go specifically to a structure called the stria vascularis. This structure is responsible for maintaining the correct potassium levels in the fluid of the inner ear. And the hair cells in the ear need that potassium to actually detect sound waves.
Oh, wow. So if a dog is bred to have an all-white coat, they might be missing those pigment cells entirely.
Exactly. And without those pigment cells in the inner ear, the stria vascularis degenerates, the hair cells die off, and the dog is left permanently deaf in one or both ears.
That is fascinating and kind of tragic.
Yeah, and this isn't unique to Bull Terriers either. It happens in Dalmatians and other white-coated breeds too. It's a structural failure at the microscopic level.
That makes verifying a puppy's hearing absolutely critical before bringing one home. But, I've seen people online say, oh, just drop a metal spoon on the kitchen floor. If the puppy jumps, it can hear.
Oh, I hate that. That is one of the most dangerous myths in dog breeding.
Why? It seems logical.
Because dogs are incredibly perceptive. A completely deaf puppy can feel the vibration of a dropped pan or spoon right through the floorboards.
Ah, I didn't think of that.
Or they might notice the visual cue of your body shifting, or even see the other hearing puppies reacting and just copy them. It tells you absolutely nothing about their actual auditory function.
How do you actually test it then, if the spoon test is junk?
Responsible breeders arrange a formal assessment known as Bay-ER testing. That stands for Brainstem Auditory Evoked Response.
Okay, sounds very clinical.
It is. Vets place tiny electrodes on the puppy's head and play a series of clicks directly into their ears. The machine measures the electrical activity in the brainstem. It is a completely objective neurological test.
So there's no guessing.
None. If the brain doesn't register the click, the dog is deaf. There's no faking a brainwave.
Got it. Oh, and just to clear the air for you listeners before we move on, the miniature bull terrier. It has a shared history, obviously, but it is a completely distinct, separate breed with its own specific genetic lines. We are focusing purely on the standard bull terrier today.
Right, that's an important distinction to make.
So we've established the raw physical strength and the anatomical quirks are still very much intact. But what happened to the terrier tenacity, that absolute refusal to quit that they needed in the 1850s?
Well, it morphed into comedy.
Comedy. I mean, I see owners constantly referring to these dogs as clowns. They are legendary for being stubborn and hilarious. But I struggle to connect a gritty fighting history to a dog that wears a lampshade on its head for laughs.
Right, it seems disconnected. But we need to reframe what clownish behavior actually is.
Okay, how so?
When a bull terrier invents a weird game or tests out different exaggerated physical actions just to see what makes you laugh and then repeats the one that got a reaction, that is high-level problem solving.
So it's not just them being silly.
No, it's an active, highly intelligent mind experimenting on its environment to extract a desired outcome, which in this case is your attention.
That explains the classic bull terrier contradiction. Like, you can be in the kitchen holding a piece of cheese and your dog will learn a brand new complex trick in 90 seconds flat. They look like absolute geniuses.
Oh, they are brilliant when they want to be.
But then, the moment you step into the backyard and there's a squirrel on the fence, they go completely deaf to the come command. I always thought that was just a dog being badly behaved or, defiant.
What's fascinating here is that you aren't dealing with defiance. You're dealing with a dog constantly performing a real-time cost-benefit analysis.
A cost-benefit analysis, like an accountant.
Kind of, yeah. Think of their brain like a physical scale.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the biological hardwired drive triggered by the squirrel. On the other side, you have the piece of cheese or the praise you're offering.
And the dog is just doing the math.
Yes.
The squirrel is outweighing the cheese.
Completely. And this physiological reality is exactly why heavy-handed correction or harsh punishments fail so spectacularly with this breed.
Because if you try to confront a physically confident, highly determined dog, you aren't going to intimidate them into listening. You're trying to intimidate a dog whose ancestors were selectively bred to never back down from a physical challenge.
Exactly. If you push them, you trigger that 1850s hardwiring. They don't fold, they escalate.
So how do you train them then?
The only way you succeed with a mind like this is by outsmarting them. You have to manipulate that internal scale. Reward-based training works because you manage the environment so that listening to you is always the highest value option available.
You essentially have to convince them that following your command was actually their idea in the first place.
That is exactly it.
So what does this all mean for someone actually living with them? If you have a dog that is highly intelligent, incredibly strong, mathematically weighing its options, and prone to escalation if pushed, how does that fit into a modern home?
Well, the flip side of all that intense persistence is an equally intense capacity for affection. They're often described as a velvet brick.
A velvet brick. I can visualize that perfectly. They will just walk up and lean their entire dense body weight right against your shin.
Yes, the classic bull terrier lean.
They want to be exactly where the action is, right? Following you from room to room like an incredibly muscular shadow.
Yeah, and that deep attachment is a direct product of their history. A working dog in a chaotic environment had to be intensely attuned to its handler.
That makes sense.
But that deep bond comes with a serious psychological cost in the modern world.
What do you mean?
Because they are wired for intense partnership, they often suffer severe psychological distress if isolated. This is a breed that will develop destructive anxiety if you just toss them into a backyard and ignore them for 10 hours a day while everyone is at work.
Taking that intense need for partnership into account, how do they handle the chaos of a busy family? Say you've got young kids running around the house.
They can be deeply bonded to children, but you really have to manage their arousal states.
Meaning they get too excited.
Yes, because of their physical density and their terrier energy, their play style is essentially full contact wrestling. You don't have a natural off switch for physical pressure.
Right, they don't know their own strength.
Exactly. So a chaotic environment with screaming, running children can quickly cause a bull terrier's arousal levels to spike, leading to accidental knockdowns or mouthy, overstimulated play. You aren't just managing the dog, you have to actively manage the energy level of the entire room.
What about taking that energy out of the house, like, say, to a dog park?
Dog parks are generally a terrible idea for this breed.
Really? Why?
Again, it comes down to arousal stacking. Bull terriers can become overstimulated very quickly in chaotic environments with strange dogs. They can be selective about their canine friends, and their historical hardwiring means that if a scuffle breaks out, they are not prone to backing away.
And I imagine that terrier ancestry makes small pets a major risk, too.
Oh, absolutely. The prey drive is a biological imperative, not a choice. Small pets like hamsters or guinea pigs are a massive risk.
What about cats? People always ask about cats.
With cats, it depends entirely on the individual dog's genetics and how carefully the introduction is managed. But it is never a guarantee, especially if the cat runs and triggers that chase instinct.
Which brings us to the question people inevitably ask when they hear about the fighting history, the muscle mass, the prey drive. Are they aggressive?
We have to look at the data impartially here. Breed identity alone does not predict an individual dog's behavior. A bull terrier is not inherently malicious. Behavior is a complex web of genetics, early socialization, fear periods, and how the dog is handled daily.
Right, but the margin for error is different, isn't it? If a tiny toy poodle has a behavioral meltdown and bites someone, it's a minor incident. If a 50-pound dog built like a tank has a meltdown, you have a severe, potentially life-altering problem.
Yes, that's exactly the point. Acknowledging their strength isn't about fearing the breed. It's about acknowledging that physical capability requires structural management. You owe it to the dog to keep them out of situations where their instincts might fail them.
So, practically speaking, can a first-time dog owner, or maybe someone living in an apartment, actually handle a bull terrier?
A committed first-timer can succeed, provided they are ready to invest heavily in understanding canine body language and consistent reward-based training.
And for the apartment dweller?
For apartment dwellers, space isn't really the issue. Routine is. Because they are so dense, they don't necessarily need miles of running, but they do need daily, purposeful, physical and mental exercise to burn off that active mind.
You really have to be careful with their physical maintenance too, don't you? Because of that compact, broad build, it is incredibly easy for a bull terrier to gain weight without the owner realizing it. The muscle literally masks the fat until their joints are under severe strain.
Joint care is paramount, especially during puppyhood. You have to prevent repetitive high-impact jumping while those heavy growth plates are forming.
That's a great tip.
Owners also need to monitor their skin. That short coat is easy to brush, but they can be highly prone to environmental allergies, which leads to severe itching and recurring skin infections. It's a breed that requires a proactive relationship with a veterinarian, especially keeping an eye on kidney and heart health as they age.
Bringing this all full circle back to you, the listener, and that dog standing in your kitchen. This dog, with its smooth, egg-shaped head, its upright ears, and its total obsession with a rubber toy, is a living, breathing history lesson. You are looking at a blueprint built for the foundries and the combat yards, expertly and painstakingly reshaped over generations for companionship.
It really is a marvel.
The grit and courage morphed into unwavering confidence. The physical power became this exuberant, full-body affection.
It leaves us with something quite profound to consider, honestly.
Oh, like what?
Well, James Hinks and his peers took a gritty working dog and, in just a matter of decades, completely reshaped its purpose into being a beloved, gentle comedian. They did this simply by changing what they valued and what they rewarded in the exhibition ring.
It makes you wonder, if a dog's physical shape, its psychological drives, and its very identity can be so radically rewritten by human aesthetic choices in such a short window of time, what does that tell us about the power we hold over the future evolution of all dog breeds?
Exactly. Are a breed's inherent traits truly set in stone, or are they just a temporary reflection of what our society happens to be asking of them at this exact moment?
Yeah.
It suggests that the future of these animals is entirely in our hands, dictated by what we choose to value next.
That is such a fascinating thought to leave off on. Are we still shaping them just by what we expect of them today in our living rooms? We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking closely at the world around you, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the incredible histories hidden right there in front of you.